The farm lay in eerie silence, as if the earth itself was holding its breath. Tu Tien and Jack sat side by side, surrounded by the scattered remains of what used to be their home. Only days ago. The farmhouse stood tall and proud, a warm place filled with memories and dreams. Now, it was reduced to jagged fragments of broken walls and rotting wood, strewn across muddy ground slick with rain. Tu Tien's eyes moved slowly over the devastation, the shattered beams, the piles of soggy debris, the patches of earth where the chicken coop had once stood. The small pond, where fish had once swum and frogs sang at dusk, was buried beneath thick layers of mud. A quiet sorrow settled deep in her chest as she took in the sight of the ruined land. The rain had not stopped. Storms had come again and again, relentless in their fury, washing away the ground beneath their feet and eroding the hope they had built over the years. The farm, their dream, their sanctuary, felt fragile, vulnerable to the whims of nature. Jack's hand found hers, rough and steady, and she squeezed back, finding comfort in his quiet presence. They had spent days clearing debris, salvaging what little they could, but the deeper truth was undeniable. This place was no longer safe. The cracks in the walls were warnings. The muddy trenches a reminder of nature's power, and the constant drizzle outside whispered doubts that grew louder with every passing hour. Tu Tien looked into Jack's eyes, searching for answers that neither of them had yet found. She remembered the laughter shared under this roof, the nights spent dreaming of a life built together, the hope that someday they would grow old surrounded by the land they loved. But now, all of it felt distant, almost out of reach. Her voice trembled as she finally spoke the question that had been haunting her since the storm passed. Should we stay and rebuild, or is it time to go? The question hung between them like the heavy clouds above, uncertain, painful, yet impossible to ignore. Because sometimes, holding on means more than just fixing what's broken. Sometimes, it means knowing when to say goodbye. That night, the rain returned with a fierce intensity, pounding the earth and whipping the trees outside their makeshift tent. Tu Tien and Jack huddled together inside the small shelter they had hastily put up, nothing more than a flimsy barrier against the storm. The cold seeped through the thin fabric, and the wind moaned like a ghost around the edges. Water had begun creeping closer to the edge of the hill, threatening to swallow even more of what little land remained. Just a few feet from their tent, a fresh landslide scarred the earth, a jagged reminder of how fragile their hold on this place had become. Jack wrapped his arms around Tu Tien, pulling her close. The fear in her eyes mirrored his own. They both understood the truth that neither wanted to say aloud. If they stayed, they would live in constant fear, always watching. Always waiting for the next flood, the next storm. Morning came cold and gray. Over a cup of weak coffee, the weight of the decision settled between them. They talked long and quietly, their voices low, tinged with sadness and resolve. Leaving was more than just packing up and walking away. It was leaving behind the land where their roots ran deep, where family stories had taken shape, where their dreams had been planted. But survival meant making hard choices. With heavy hearts but clear minds, they agreed it was time to leave. We need to find higher ground, Jack said softly. A place where we can build again, and live without fear. Tu Tien nodded, tears welling but her spirit quietly strong. It was the end of one chapter, painful, yes, but also the fragile beginning of another. They looked out over the broken farm one last time, wondering what the future would hold. With their decision made, Tu Tien and Jack packed the few belongings they could carry and set off at first light, guided by the wisdom of their neighbors. The villagers pointed them toward a higher ground a few miles to the north, a place rumored to be safe from the floods that had swallowed their farm. The journey was far from easy. The narrow trail was slick and muddy, winding through thick patches of forest and crossing cold, rushing streams. Every step reminded them of the fragility of their lives, but also of their determination to find a fresh start. Along the way, they met other families who had also lost everything to the storms. There was a quiet camaraderie among them, strangers bound by loss, hope, and the courage to keep moving forward. They shared stories, small comforts, and sometimes a simple meal before continuing on their separate paths. After hours of trekking, the landscape began to change. The air grew cooler and fresher, and the dense forest gave way to rolling hills covered in wild grasses and blooming wildflowers. The sky above was wide and open, letting the sunlight spill across the land in warm golden pools. Finally, they reached a clearing on the crest of a hill. It was a stretch of open earth, untouched and fertile, overlooking the valley below. From here, they could see the sun casting a soft glow on the distant trees, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of pine and fresh rain. Jack turned to Tu Tien, his eyes reflecting the same cautious hope she felt deep inside. This could be home," he said quietly. Tu Tien took a deep breath, feeling a mixture of relief and excitement. The road ahead would be long, and challenges awaited, but here, in this quiet place, the promise of safety and new beginnings felt real. Together they stood on that hilltop, ready to build not just a new farm, but a new life, one shaped by resilience, love, and the hope that even after loss, there is always a chance to start again. The first days on the hilltop were filled with both hard work and quiet hope. Tu Tien and Jack set up a small tent, their temporary shelter against the elements. Though humble, it was a place where they could rest and plan what was to come. The fresh air and open sky felt like a healing balm after the darkness of the storm. Word spread quickly through the village about their new beginning. Soon neighbors arrived bearing gifts, bundles of wood, bundles of bamboo, tools, and food. Some came to help, others to simply offer company and encouragement. It was a reminder that even after disaster, community could still be a source of strength. Together, they began the slow process of rebuilding. Jack took charge of constructing a sturdy frame for their new home, carefully measuring and hammering beams while Tu Tien worked on clearing the land and preparing the soil. They dug a new pond to replace the one lost in the flood, shaping it to catch fresh rainwater and sustain life. Every nail driven, every plank laid, was an act of faith, a belief that the future could be brighter. They built new fences for the animals, planted rows of vegetables in neat, hopeful lines, and fashioned tools from what they could find. Evenings were spent around a small fire, sharing stories and dreams, letting the warmth of the flames chase away the chill of the night. One afternoon, as Tu Tien planted a row of sunflowers along the garden's edge, she felt a deep sense of peace wash over her. The soil was rich and dark, promising growth. The sound of a nearby stream trickling over stones added a soothing rhythm to the day. Jack smiled, watching her with pride. "We're not just rebuilding a house," he said softly. "We're rebuilding a dream." And it was true. This new farm was more than shelter, it was a symbol of resilience, love, and hope. A place where they could nurture new life and build new memories. As the days passed, small signs of life began to flourish. Tender green shoots sprouted from the earth, wild birds returned to the trees, and the gentle hum of insects filled the warm afternoon air. The farm, once broken and bare, was slowly coming alive again. At night, Tu Tien and Jack would sit side by the fire, wrapped in blankets against the cool breeze. They would talk about the past, the storms and losses, but also about the future they were creating, a future where fear no longer ruled. In that quiet moment, beneath a sky full of stars, they understood something vital, that home is not just a place, but a promise. A promise to keep going, to hold on to hope, and to believe in the power of new beginnings. As the seasons changed, so did the farm. Tender green shoots pushed through the soil, and new life quietly took hold. Tu Tien watched with a smile as the first tiny sprouts of lettuce and carrots grew strong under the warm sun. Jack had built a small wooden bridge over the stream nearby, making it easier to carry water and supplies across. The days were busy, but filled with a sense of purpose. Chickens brought from the village started to settle in their new coop, their soft clucks and morning calls adding a comforting rhythm to the farm. The air was fresh, scented with wild flowers and the promise of renewal. Sometimes neighbors would stop by with seedlings, or a basket of fresh vegetables. Their visits reminded Tu Tien and Jack they were not alone, that community and kindness could heal wounds deeper than any storm. One evening, after a long day's work, Tu Tien sat on the porch, her hands deep in the soil as she planted marigolds and sunflowers around the garden. The sky was painted with soft hues of pink and orange, the sun setting gently behind the distant hills. She thought back to the nights spent in fear, the uncertainty of what the future might bring. Now, sitting here with Jack by her side, she felt something she hadn't known for a long time: peace. Jack reached for her hand, and together they watched the sky darken and stars appear, one by one. "We lost everything we had," he whispered, "but we found everything we needed." Tu Tien nodded, squeezing his hand. They had lost their home, their farm, and the life they once dreamed of, but in this new place, with courage and love, they had found hope, safety, and each other. The farm on the hill was more than just land and buildings. It was a symbol of resilience and the power of new beginnings. It was proof that even after the worst storms, life could bloom again. And as night settled softly around them, Tu Tien knew deep in her heart that this was truly home. Life has a way of testing us, washing away the familiar, breaking what we thought was unbreakable. Tu Tien and Jack lost everything they once called home, yet through their courage and love, they discovered something even more powerful: the strength to begin again. Their story is not just about rebuilding a farm or finding new land. It's about resilience, the quiet determination to face uncertainty, the hope that grows in the darkest moments, and the deep belief that home is more than a place. It's the people we love, the dreams we nurture, and the courage to keep moving forward. No matter how fierce the storms, no matter how many times life tries to pull us down, there is always a chance to start anew. With community, love, and hope, we can find safety and peace, sometimes in the most unexpected places. Tu Tien and Jack's journey reminds us that even after loss, there is renewal. And that the heart, when open and brave, will always lead us home.